If you've been cheated on and are dumb enough to take them back, it's important that you know that studies show they are 70% more likely to cheat again compared to someone who hasn't. That's over 3 times more likely. And the crazy part is that most people, they hear this, they nod, and they still say, but my partner's different. I pray to God that they are, but the odds are just not in your favor. You don't get to rewrite studies and statistics because you're in love. You see, men lie, women lie, cheaters lie, but the facts don't lie, and neither do patterns. So in this video, I'm going to break down 5 undeniable signs that someone will cheat on you again. And if you spot these signs in your relationships, don't romanticize them, don't excuse them, don't gaslight yourself. Recognize them for what they are, a flashing neon warning sign that says, danger, cheater in sight. My name is Raph, and on this channel, I give you raw, no BS relationship advice. If you're going through a breakup or trying to heal from a narcissist, then consider subscribing because I drop content every week that will shift the way you see relationships and yourself. And I'd also love for you to follow me on Instagram where I post daily reels, and extra content that doesn't always make it here on YouTube. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment down below. I'd love for you to join me there too. But for now, let's get back to today's video. 5 signs that they'll cheat on you again. Number 1, they have a history of infidelity. See, the past is the best prophet of the future. If someone has cheated before, you better believe it's a rehearsal for what's to come. A study published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior tracked hundreds of adults in romantic relationships over a span of 5 years. Well, the results? It showed that over 70% of people who took back a cheater ended up getting cheated on again. These studies, they revealed that a past history of cheating, was one of the strongest predictors of future infidelity. You see, the first time someone cheats, there's fear, right? Their heart's racing, guilt is heavy, their mind screams, what if I get caught? But once they've crossed that line and survived, whether they got away or even if they got caught but faced no real consequences, the barrier is gone. The voice that once screamed, don't do it, it goes quietly. The guilt, it dulls, and every time after that, it becomes easier. Think about it like the first time you ever rode a roller coaster. The first time you were terrified, but once you rode it, once you felt the rush and realized that you didn't die, it just got easier after that. Cheating, it works the same way. And I don't 100% believe that quote, once a cheater, always a cheater, is always necessarily true. Because yes, people can change, but change, it takes a brutal accountability and real transformation, not just words. But let's be honest with ourselves. Most people don't put in that work. Most people, they don't run to therapy, face their childhood wounds, dig into why they were unfaithful. No, they just run to the next opportunity. So if someone has cheated before and they've done nothing to change, like nothing to prove different, you need to stop believing that you are the exception, because you're not the exception. You're just the next repetition. Proverbs 26:11 says, as a dog returns to his vomit, so fools repeat their folly. Now, if they've done it once and they haven't healed or repented, don't be shocked when they go right back at it again. Number 2, poor boundaries and conflict avoidance. Now, understand that cheating, it doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in the DMs. It starts in the micro compromises, the so-called innocent flirting. The little secrets they tell themselves don't count. Weak boundaries are like termites in a house. They're small and visible at first, but eventually they'll eat the whole structure. Know that boundaries are not just about saying no to cheating. They're about saying no to everything that leads up to cheating. Those late night texts with someone who has a crush on you, that's a boundary violation. Constant lunches with someone who's clearly interested, boundary violation. Keeping your partner in the dark about who you're messaging with, boundary violation. You see, people who cheat, they often start long before the actual betrayal. They build a web of small compromises until the final act feels inevitable. Now combine that with conflict avoidance. This is when someone can't sit down and say, I'm not happy, let's talk. Instead, they avoid the hard conversation and they go find comfort somewhere else. Instead of repairing the roof when it leaks, they just run to another house when it rains. That's what cheaters do. And psychologically, people who avoid conflict use cheating as an escape route. It's not even about the person they cheated with. It's about avoiding the discomfort of being honest. And here's the problem. Life guarantees conflicts. Relationships, they guarantee conflicts. If someone doesn't know how to handle it in a healthy way, they're always just one argument away from running back into someone else's arms. Think of it like this. If you own a car, but every time it breaks down, you just abandon it on the side of the road and buy a new one, well, what does that say about you? It says you're irresponsible, impulsive, and unwilling to fix what's broken. That's exactly what cheaters with poor boundaries operate. They rather trade in their commitment for a new thrill than repair the relationship that they're in. Number 3, continued secrecy and shady behavior. Now, this one's huge. If after being caught cheating, your partner still acts shady, still hides their phone, still dodges questions, still guards their privacy like a government agent, then you need to wake the fuck up, because all you're doing is preparing for the sequel. It's important that you understand that secrecy is the oxygen of betrayal. Without secrecy, cheating can't really survive. But if they stay secretive, all they're doing is guarding the back doors, keeping their options open, making sure that they can sneak off when temptation comes knocking again. You don't rebuild trust with words. You rebuild it with transparency. If someone just says, just trust me, but their actions are shady, their words are worthless, because trust isn't giving, it is earned. Luke 8:17 says, for there is nothing hidden that would not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that would not be known or brought out into the open. So what does that mean? It means that secrecy will always expose itself. If you feel the secrecy, if you sense the shadows, chances are you're probably right. Number 4, they are narcissistic or have an entitled mindset. See, narcissists, they typically cheat because they believe rules don't apply to them. They live like, they're the sun and everyone else is just orbiting planets. A study in the Journal of Sex Research found that narcissistic individuals, they reported significantly higher rates of repeated cheating. Now, why is that? I believe it's because they don't view monogamy as commitment. They see it as restriction. They don't view cheating as betrayal. They see it as options. If your partner constantly puts their needs above yours, if they expect loyalty but do not return it, if they twist every situation and make themselves the victim, then you're dating a narcissist. And narcissists, they don't feel guilt the way that normal people do. They don't lose sleep over breaking your heart. They don't reflect. They just justify. And when entitlement meets opportunity, betrayal is almost inevitable. They think that they deserve more. They think that they can do better. They think, well, why settle for one meal when I can sample the whole buffet? And as long as that mindset is alive, cheating is just waiting for its next chance. Proverbs 16:18 says, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, entitlement is pride. Narcissism is pride. And pride guarantees destruction. So if you see this in your partner, don't think that you'll be the exception that changes them. You'll just be the next casualty in their cycle of destruction. And number 5, lack of genuine remorse or accountability. Here's probably the most dangerous sign. No real remorse. Don't fall for their fake, rehearsed apologies. Saying I was drunk is one of the dumbest excuses that you can fall for. Although even blame you, saying something like, if you had given me more attention, I wouldn't have done it. Does that sound like accountability to you? Because to me, that sounds more like manipulation. True remorse, it's brutal. It's raw. It sounds like I betrayed you, I broke your trust, I hurt you, and it's 100% my fault. And it shows in actions, not just words. Consistent transparency, change behavior, and most importantly, accountability. Because without accountability, nothing changes. If they don't believe that it was their fault, why would they resist the next temptation? Why would they do the work to change? People who can't own their actions are doomed to repeat them. And even biblically, forgiveness isn't blind. God forgives those who repent. Repentance means change. If someone says sorry but doesn't change, your forgiveness, it doesn't bind them to loyalty. It frees them to betray you again. So let's put it all together to wrap this video up. A history of cheating shows you the future. Poor boundaries and conflict avoidance, it guarantees that they'll run instead of repair. Continued secrecy is not privacy, it's preparation. Narcissism and entitlement, they make betrayal feel like a right, not a wrong. And a lack of genuine remorse, it ensures that they'll repeat the same cycle. You can believe their words or you can believe the statistics. You can trust their excuses or you can trust the patterns, but the choice is yours. Do you want to gamble your dignity on someone who's already proven what they're capable of? Or do you want to break free and build a life where trust is the foundation, not the exception? Betrayal hurts, but staying with someone who betrays again and again and again will destroy you. Don't ignore the signs. Don't let love blind you to the truth. Understand that cheaters, they don't change unless they willingly choose to. And remember, men lie, women lie, cheaters lie, but their actions and repeated patterns don't lie. If you got any value out of this video, don't forget to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram, because remember, I post daily content on Instagram that don't necessarily make it here on YouTube. So if you get value out of these videos, then you're definitely going to want to check out what I post on Instagram. I'm going to go ahead and leave my handle down in the description below, or probably I'll drop it in the pinned comment as well. Thanks for watching. And don't forget, check one of these videos out if you haven't. Thanks for watching. Now catch one of these. Peace.